What should Nebraska fans expect of Matt Rhule? Whether that's bare minimum requirements you want him to fulfill on an annual basis, like never losing 7 games again, never missing a bowl game again, or whether it's certain achievements you want him to earn and put in Nebraska's trophy case before he retires, before he leaves for another job, before his tenure in Lincoln as the head coach of the Nebraska Cornhuskers football team ends, because inevitably it will. We can never, none of us can never escape time, and eventually that chapter will close. But regardless of whether it's the bare minimum that you want him to fulfill every year, whether you're looking to swing big and you want him to win a national championship or win the Big Ten or be an annual college football playoff contender, what should Nebraska fans expect of Matt Rhule is a pretty loaded and general question. And I wanted to answer that today. In fact, I wanted to answer it a few days ago on a live show of mine. But I was having some technical difficulties with said live show, and because this is a loaded question, and because I think it's one that needs to be answered in a very careful and calculated manner, I decided that I would postpone it so that I could produce at the highest quality while answering this question, while trying to answer this question. I'm ultimately not the one who should have the final say here because I'm not a Nebraska fan, and more importantly than even that, I'm not in the building. I'm not the athletic director. I'm not Matt Rhule himself. I can't properly assess what Nebraska football as a program is capable of. So I'm going to try and answer this question and have some fun with it. Sit back, relax, and engage in your football fanatic personality. This is College Football with Sam here. We talk about everything from the Big Ten to the SEC to college football as a whole. We talk about Nebraska at least once a week, if not several times a week. In fact, this week, we're going to be talking about it more than just one time because tomorrow on our live show at 6 p.m., I will be answering a question from a Nebraska fan of mine who's a member of our Discord server, where if you want to ask me a question and have me make a video on it, join the Discord server through the link in the description, navigate to the link for the Discord, and then once you join that, navigate to the hashtag YouTube mailbox channel and ask a question for me, and at some point this summer, I will answer it. Also, if you haven't already, please hit the like button. Very important as it helps us get into the algorithm. Share this video around. Subscribe to the channel. We're on a quest to hit 6-figure numbers, 100,000 subscribers. I believe this channel is capable of that thanks to you and the work that we do here, myself and my graphic designer. Hopefully the team gets bigger. And also hit the notification bell and make sure to subscribe to the Nebraska podcast, which is really just a playlist of all things Nebraska that I talk about. But again, this is a rather loaded question, and I was panning through, I was browsing through the just basic Wikipedia page listing all the Nebraska Cornhusker football seasons, and I found myself intrigued at the number of national championships Nebraska won from 1970 to 2000, 5 of them, and they were in contention for several more. That's pretty impressive right there. In a 30-year span to win it 5 times, that means 1 out of every 6 years Nebraska was winning a title. And in that same time frame, they didn't lose more than 3 games, 9-3, and finishing tied for 4th in the Big 8 conference was their worst finish. It was a 9-3-1 season, 3 losses, a tie, and 9 wins. And they still finished ranked inside the top 10. When you look at the AP poll, coaches poll, they finished outside of the top 10. But under the AP poll from 1970 to 2000, they only finished outside of the AP top 10 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Actually, 7, 8. Missed a few there. But even then, in most of those, they were still ranked inside the top 15 in all but the 1998 and 1990 season. Tremendous amount of success under Tom Osborne and Bob Devaney. But the point that I was making here is that Bob Devaney had 2 seasons where he went 6-4, and Tom Osborne had multiple campaigns where he finished 9-3, finished .750, which is good. But for example, Urban Meyer or Ryan Day have never had seasons that bad at Ohio State, just as an example. So I found that interesting because Nebraska obviously was a dynasty in the 20th century, one of the best, if not the best program in college football at that point. But at the same time, factoring in their fall from grace, which really started before the Bo Pelini era, started under Bill Callahan. Pelini tried to revive it, but couldn't get over the hump, couldn't really beat the teams that he needed to beat to be a Big Ten championship contender, to be a consistent player in college football. So the downfall started before him, and then his firing was the nail in the coffin for, I think, the first quarter of the 21st century of Nebraska football. Then you have Mike Riley, you have Scott Frost. I don't want to bore all of you. All of you Nebraska fans know this, especially those who watch the show consistently. I have a large Nebraska contingent. I just want to say thank you to you all for being active, for viewing and engaging with me and my content, even for paying for my tuition. You Nebraska fans have done all those things, and it's really awesome to, witness your joy, your pain, more pain than joy recently, but last year was your best season in a while, and it was awesome to see you go bowling, to laugh about some of the bad things and also some of the good redeeming moments, like that win over Wisconsin last year. In many ways, I've been able to, thanks to the privilege of being friends with Nebraska people, going on many channels, specifically Corn Crazed, but Corn Nation as well, and being engaged with the fan base as much as I am, in a certain sense, I've got to live in the shadow of a Nebraska fan and witness their program in recent memory. And I can tell you, I think this is a perfect place to really start getting into what the expectation should be for the future, objectively, not just looking at the past for answers, but factoring in the past, factoring in my recent experience, and even prognostications, my predictions for Nebraska football, for example, ever since this channel has begun. I have consistently overestimated them. I have. In 2021, I picked them to go bowling. In 2020, I picked Nebraska, I believe, to finish with a 500 record or better. But my channel wasn't really consistent during the COVID year, so if you don't want to count that, that's perfectly fine. And in the COVID year, I really didn't know what I was talking about. It was just me having fun. 2021 and beyond, I started learning more and more each year. In 2022, many of you will remember this, or if you don't, when I mention it, you'll remember it. I'll have refreshed your memory. I picked Nebraska to win the Big Ten West, go 10-2, and be a top 15, top 10 team. Then Northwestern happened. Then North Dakota and Georgia Southern happened. After a 1-2 start, Frost was fired. One of the worst predictions I've ever made on the channel. In 2023, I thought to myself, hey, this is a 6-win team, maybe a 7-win team. I forget if it was 6-6 or 7-5. I think I bounced between those predictions for 2023. They went 5-7. In 2024, I picked him to go 9-3. At one point, I think I picked him to go 10-2, but I think I quickly pulled back from that, just looking at some of the things in the roster, the holes, the fact that Matt Rhule was only in year 2. It was clear the roster wasn't quite there yet, and Raiola was, after all, just a freshman. They almost missed a bowl game again, but thankfully didn't, due to Matt Rhule making a pivot, making a change in the midseason that was wise, and hiring Dana Holgorsen. If they kept Marcus Satterfield, that team would not have beaten Wisconsin. I'm pretty confident in that. And then they win their bowl game. First winning season since 2016. What am I going to pick for Nebraska this year? Well, that is a mystery, but I have said before in a video a few weeks ago that I think Nebraska is still a year away from really being a college football playoff contender. Doesn't mean they can't contend for it this year. It's in the cards, but I don't think in even a third of the possible outcomes, or half of them, certainly not. If we were to simulate the season 1,000 times based on what I know and what we know, I don't think Nebraska would reach the college football playoff a third or even a fourth of the time. It happens a few times. They have the talent to do so. They have the quarterback, and I think they have the offensive coordinator, head coach, and potential in their assistant pool to do that. But it's not going to happen the majority of the time. So for this year, just for 2025, I think the expectation should be just continue the path of linear improvement. So you went 7-6 last year, you got to go 8-5 or better. You have to. Otherwise, the season's a failure. Even at 8-5, you might think that the year's just kind of meh. But meh is still an improvement over what last year was. Last year was nearly a total disaster. 9-4 or better, I think, is an absolute success. And certainly if those 9 wins all come in the regular season and you meet up with a competent bowl opponent, a team who barely missed the playoffs, like let's say South Carolina last year or Ole Miss last year, a team of that caliber, and you lose to them, there's no shame in that. Those teams were awesome in 2024. But I also want to move beyond what 2025 is. That's why I only barely touched on it. You see the 2025 schedule that I have pulled up on the screen, the win total 7.5, the Big Ten odds plus 3,500, and I think they've moved up. They've moved up recently. They may even be better than that. I know they're better than Indiana now, and that wasn't the case a few weeks ago. Their national title odds are fairly low. Same with odds to reach the playoffs if they're out there. Couldn't find them on FanDuel. This is a very doable schedule. It's going to be one of the easier schedules Nebraska has moving forward. Week 1 versus Cincinnati. Week 2 versus Akron. Week 3 versus Houston Christian. Week 4 versus Michigan. Cincinnati's a neutral site game, but there will be more Nebraska fans in that stadium than Cincinnati for sure. Akron, Houston Christian, Michigan, home games all before the Week 5 bye. It's a very workable September schedule with a prove-it game against Michigan, who will, I'm 95% sure, will be without their head coach. Week 5, you get a bye. Week 6, against Michigan State, another home game. Then Nebraska has their first road game in Game 6 at Maryland. Then in Game 7, in Week 8, they travel to Minnesota, back-to-back road games. Northwestern they host in Week 9, USC they host in Week 10, Week 11 they play at UCLA. They get a bye Week 12, and then you have that 2-game stretch that's very important. At Penn State in Week 13, which I will tell you right now, here and now, Nebraska is not winning that game. If they do, it will be a miracle, but more likely than not, they will get blown out than they will win in that game. And I think Nebraska fans know that. With what Penn State returns, it's going to be on the road late in November. That crowd is going to be wild as always in Beaver Stadium. And then after that game, no matter what happens, because it's going to be emotional, it's going to be tiring, against Week 14, against Iowa, you got to show up and you got to show out. And I would say you have to win, because Nebraska's a program should be better than Iowa. And that's the final game on a Friday night in Week 14 at the end of the regular season. So that's just talking about the schedule, really the final thoughts that I have and what Nebraska fans should expect of Matt Rhule in 2025. You should expect eight regular season wins. For whatever reason, I couldn't talk there. 8 regular season wins. 7, I think, is disappointing, but it's still a linear improvement out of last year. And then if you win the bowl game, you win 8 games. 9-3 or anything better with this schedule, I think, would be fantastic. That would be a pleasant surprise, more than a pleasant surprise. That would be a surprise that I think should put ice through your veins. You should have that feeling of that you were struck by lightning if Nebraska wins 75% of their regular season games. Even with this schedule, which should be one of the easier schedules Nebraska has in the near future, the roster still isn't where Rhule wants it to be. So even with tougher schedules in the future, Nebraska may win more games with those tougher schedules than they do this year, because their roster might be further ahead in a variety of positions. But I also want to go over the long term. What are the expectations for the long term? I asked earlier, what should Nebraska fans expect of Matt Rhule in 2025? And I want you to go into the comment section below and give me an answer for 2025, but also for the long term. What do you think the expectations should be? And what are some achievements that you want him to earn? What are some trophies that you want him to win before he leaves Nebraska, before he's no longer in Lincoln and is no longer the head coach? Let me know down below. Goal number 1, expectation number 1, is that Nebraska should never have a losing season again. Ever. Ever. Now, I'm saying this specifically under Matt Rhule, and I don't know what the future of college football holds. If the future of college football is becoming the NFL light and like a 4, 5, 6 year developmental league for the pros, then this is probably unrealistic, because even some of the better teams and better coaches have those losing seasons in the NFL, because every game you play in has the potential to be a loss. There are no free wins. There are no games where you're given a 90% chance to win unless you face off against one of those generationally bad NFL teams. It's different than college. But if college football isn't going to totally become like the NFL, and while it's certainly heading in the direction of becoming more like the NFL, at least theoretically, it's much more chaotic than that right now, I still think that it's going to retain some semblance of what college football used to be, if not a great part of that. So I think for now this is very realistic. They should never have a losing season again. No more 5-7, no more 4-8. That right there means someone has to be fired. Whether that's the head coach, or more likely than not, if Rhule's having a lot of success, and then like Michigan State did in 2016, like Notre Dame did in 2016, like Michigan did in 2020. Notre Dame and Michigan didn't have the same success as Michigan State when they had their losing seasons that were like, whoa, that's bad. But still, the point remains. All of those are really good programs. State was more successful in the example I'm using, but Notre Dame and Michigan are blue bloods. In every one of those years, except for 2016 MSU, someone was fired. Michigan and Notre Dame rebounded, and they rebounded rather quickly. The following year, they were way better. Michigan State, they didn't fire anyone. The year after that in 17 was a mirage with 10 wins, and after that, D'Antonio kind of sunk the ship, wrecked the boat, destroyed the program. So you cannot have a losing season again. Goal number 2, 6, 7, or 8 wins. So still better than 2024. And I say that because I think 6-6, the average 6-6 Nebraska team, if that ever happens in the future, will be better than last year's 6-6 team. The future Nebraska 6-6 team would probably go 6-6, losing all their games by 1 or 2 scores, and they'd be facing a tougher schedule than what Nebraska faced last season. So all those teams, 6, 7, or 8 wins in the future, still better than 24. That win total, those win totals, if not, maybe you eliminate the 6 and you say 7 or 8 wins should be the absolute floor on an annual basis. I can respect that. Again, depending on how college football changes, that could be unrealistic. But as of right now, and where college football is right now, and the fact that no, Nebraska has not been good recently, but they have a really large NIL collective. Their blue blood status still matters, and they're invested in football and have a good staff. They should not win fewer than 6 games ever, and I'd say it's reasonable to say they should never win less than 7 or maybe even less than 8 if they can put together several seasons in a row where they win, 9, 10 games, maybe only occasionally 8. 6, 7, maybe 8 wins, that should be the down trough. That should be the down cycle, the rebuilding years. Goal number 3 is I think 9 or 10 wins should be usual. Think of the Bo Pelini era. Now, those Bo Pelini teams did in an easier Big Ten than what we have right now. There weren't as many possibly elite teams. None of those teams in the Bo Pelini era, outside of maybe Ohio State in 2014, were even close to greatest of all time caliber. None of them. None of the Michigan State teams, none of the Ohio State teams outside of 2014, and they just had that potential. I don't even know if they were that good. I think that 2 Ryan Day teams in terms of power rankings / ratings were better than that national championship team, the 19 team and last year's team. Maybe some more. I don't know. Maybe I'm underrating 2014 Ohio State. But Bo Pelini played in a Big Ten that was much weaker than today. I get that. But they still won, 9, 10 games in the regular season. Think of 2012. 10-2, 7-1 in conference. Only loss in conference was to an Ohio State team that went 12-0 and was coached by one of the best to ever do it in Urban Meyer. I think that Matt Rhule has the better personality than Bo Pelini. And by the better personality, I mean definitive. A definitive, ideal personality that's better than what Bo Pelini had for leadership, for culture, for development, for commanding a program. I think Matt Rhule's more successful at those things. He's more successful of a builder than Bo Pelini is. Bo Pelini did not inherit the same bad situation that Rhule did. Close, because Callahan tried to destroy the program, and I think Pelini was a good coach. But he was able to win 8, 9, 10 games pretty consistently. And he had talent to do it. And he did that in the Big 12 as well. Won 8, 9, 10 games a year. And I think that Nebraska can still do that. Not every year, but 9 or 10 wins being the usual, and occasionally you have that 7, 8 win season, and sometimes you have the occasional 11 or even 12 win season mixed in to balance the down years out. That would be awesome. I think that's reasonable for the Cornhuskers right now. Let me know if you think that's unreasonable. Maybe the 12 wins is unreasonable. Maybe even 11 wins is. But 10-2 will get you in the college football playoff, especially with the schedules that Nebraska has in, say, 2026 and beyond. Goal number 4. Nebraska must be a Big Ten contender. But at the same time, you have to expect Nebraska to really just be a contender. In most years, they're not going to win it. This is where I'm getting into the tempering of long-term expectations. They should be high. Nebraska should expect to be one of the better programs in college football. But when you have Ohio State, when you have Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, USC, these are programs that have been, A, more successful than you in recent memory, all of them dramatically so, even USC, who's disappointed. They've been much more successful than you have because Nebraska's had several losing seasons in a row, and none of those programs have had that. Even Washington recently, more successful than you are. Minnesota, recently more successful. Almost everyone in the Big Ten has had more recent success or better seasons, better highs than Nebraska's had so far. Those schools, again, Penn State, Oregon, USC, Michigan, Ohio State, they all have a head start. They all have better recruiting grounds. They all have better pipelines. They have more talent now. And they may all have more resources. I don't know that much, so that's why I said they may have more resources. But whenever those teams are on their high and you're at your high at the same time, chances are they're going to be better than you. So Nebraska should be a Big Ten contender, and I think it should be an expectation that Rhule at least wins the Big Ten once if he's going to be here for more than a decade or 2 decades. Rhule isn't the oldest coach in the world, very far from it, middle-aged guy. He can coach for a while, so I think it's reasonable to say, yeah, he should win the Big Ten one year of a really awesome season, maybe more than that. But to expect to win it most years, I think at this point is unreasonable, and we have to first see him win 9, 10 games and beat good teams before we can say they should be a Big Ten winner most years, not just a contender. And goal number 5. I have no idea if Nebraska will win a title again. It's going to be hard because, again, they're a blue blood that doesn't have a rich recruiting ground. You know, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, California, Texas, the entire South, like Florida, Georgia, Alabama. These are all states, and even more than that, Indiana, for example, that Illinois, that the top programs in the Big Ten and also in the nation have recruited out of. Nebraska doesn't have deep pipelines, at least consistently, and in the rearview mirror, they have not had deep pipelines in either of those states. They prioritize homegrown recruits. That's what they've traditionally done. They're trying to lock up their best homegrown recruits in Nebraska and in the Midwest right now. They have recruited well in Iowa and neighboring states at different times. And with USC joining the Big Ten, maybe they can get into California more easily. But they don't have the recruiting grounds, the recent success, the recent appeal, and the top resources of an Oregon or Texas to probably compensate for that. Like Oregon's in a similar situation, for example. The Ducks do not have a lot of great talent within Oregon, the state, but they can go out to California or they can go at a national level because they have money, recent success, and an elite recruiting staff, and one of the best head coaches in the nation in Dan Lanning. And again, NIL deals, fantastic money, resources, dedication to football. Nebraska's the dedication, but I don't know if they have an Oregon-level NIL or if they can. If they can get there, that should be another goal for long-term expectations, because that would really help compensate for some potential recruiting limitations that Nebraska has right now and that they could bump into in a frustrating way if they really build success. And, they hit 9-10 wins, but they struggle to get above that, and they think, why is that? And typically to get above 9-10 or maybe occasionally 11-12 wins, you have to have either an elite staff or elite recruiting or a combination of the two. The latter, of course, is preferable, and then you get national titles and dynasties. Maybe I've talked about this for too long, and maybe this is too many goals. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. I'm not saying that I'm the all-knowing being or the Nebraska football expert here, but having lived in the shadow of many Nebraska fans, having watched all their games, dating back to, I would say, 2021, or at least 90 to 95% of their games, watching Corn Crazed's reactions, reading articles, diving deep into their roster, following recruiting. I think I know this team. And I think by the end of the summer, I'll know it like the back of my hand. I'll know it like my hometown. Part of me feels like I can say that to a certain degree right now, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where there's more certainty. This is a program that can be one of the best in America. Make no mistake about it. They can be one of the better programs in America still. I don't think that has been taken away from them. But in terms of having a Bob Devaney or Tom Osborne dynasty, that might be pushing it for the long term. If it comes, it's a pleasant surprise. I think if Nebraska, pulls some rabbits out of the hat, if they make some adjustments, if they find a niche, if they find something that others have not found yet, if they hit the jackpot, if they find the gold mine before others do, whether that's something new that can benefit them program-wise, or they find favor with a billionaire. Maybe Warren Buffett wants to see Nebraska win a title before he dies, donates a bunch of money, and becomes their Phil Knight. I don't know. But I think that right now the expectations long-term should be 9-10 wins, occasionally 7 or 8 in a down year, 11, maybe 12 for an up year if the schedule's very beneficial, and that should just be consistently flowing for the rest of the Matt Rhule era. Not saying that should be the expectation this year. I think expecting 10 wins, even with this schedule, with just where the roster's at, could be disappointing. Same with even 9. If they get 8 regular season wins and win 2 more games in the regular season over last year, I think that's good. If they go 9-3 or better, that's fantastic. This year's expectations, again, I think 7-8 wins, 9, somewhere in that range, depending on how good the teams are. Preferably, I'd say 8 or 9. I think 7 is just meh. Like, we improved, but the schedule was just as easy, and we're having tougher schedules in the future. Come on. We got to be better than this. But in the long run, I think that this team should consistently be a top 20, top 15 team yearly, occasionally hitting the top 10, sometimes maybe sliding out of the top 20 to top 25, and then tell me in the comments whether I'm insane for saying that with the strength of the Big Ten, with the strength of schedule, the average one moving forward, and also with the fact that Nebraska does have some recruiting limitations, and I don't know yet if they have an elite staff, that maybe occasionally winning 7, 6, or 8 games is going to happen, especially only winning 8 games, because if you run into a Wisconsin-like schedule, 8-4 means you're probably a top 15, certainly a top 20 football team. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that I helped maybe shape your expectations or at least gave you something to think about. I think that Nebraska is a proud program, a blue blood, and I think they're trending in the right direction under Matt Rhule. Go Big Red. I say that to all you loyal Nebraska subscribers. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.